Ever thought I'd come home to an empty apartment and a note that said, "We knew you'd understand"? My name is Zoey. I'm 31 years old and I've been supporting myself since I was 19. Not because I wanted to prove something, because I had to. My parents weren't bad people. Or at least, that's what I told myself for a long time. They were just the kind of people who loved my brother more. Not in the quiet, subtle way that you can almost convince yourself isn't real. In the loud, obvious, furniture is gone from your apartment way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I work in supply chain consulting. It sounds dry, and honestly, most of it is. But it pays well, and 3 years ago when I was 28, that paycheck finally let me put a down payment on a one-bedroom condo in Charlotte. Nothing fancy. Second floor, small balcony, carpet that I ripped out myself one Saturday with a utility knife and a YouTube tutorial. I put down hardwood. I painted the walls this specific shade of warm gray. I spent 2 weekends picking out. I bought a real couch, not the IKEA assembled at midnight kind. A proper one, with cushions that didn't flatten after a month. I hung my grandmother's mirror above the fireplace. That condo was the first thing in my life that was entirely, completely mine. My brother, I'll call him by what he is rather than his name, is 26. He's always been the one my parents orbited around. When we were kids, his soccer games were the family events. Mine were the ones my mom attended when she could. When he dropped out of college his sophomore year, my parents called it finding himself. When I took a gap semester to save money, my mother cried and told the relatives I was struggling. He had a talent for appearing just incompetent enough that everyone felt the need to rescue him, and just charming enough that they felt good about doing it. I should have seen what was coming. Last spring, my company sent me to Zurich for 8 weeks. It was the longest assignment I'd ever had, and I was honestly excited. Real Swiss chocolate, the lake, the trains that actually ran on time. Before I left, I had one conversation with my mother. One. She called to say my brother had broken up with his girlfriend and was having a hard time and asked if he could stay at my place for a week or two just to get his head straight. I said no. Clearly, politely, but clearly. I said I wasn't comfortable with someone in my space while I was gone, and that I'd already asked my friend Daphne to check on the plants twice a week. My mother said, "Okay, I understand." She did not understand. I landed in Zurich on a Tuesday. By Thursday, Daphne texted me, "Hey, there's a guy at your place. He said you gave him a key." I called her immediately. She described my brother. I called my mother. She said, and I want you to hear this clearly. She said, "He was sleeping in his car, Zoey." What was I supposed to do? I said, "Not give him a key to my apartment." She told me it would only be for 2 weeks. That he'd be gone before I got back. That I was being dramatic and that family helps family. I told her if he caused any damage, they were paying for it. She laughed a little, not a mean laugh. The laugh of someone who genuinely didn't believe there would be damage. That scared me more than anything. Here's what I didn't know then. My parents had given him not just a key, but access to my parking space, my storage unit in the garage, and somehow the access code to the building's package room. I found this out later. Much later. The 8 weeks passed. I was busy. I checked in with Daphne twice more and she said everything looked okay from the outside. She hadn't been inside since that first time because my brother had told her I said it was fine, and she didn't need to keep coming by. I should have pushed back on that. I didn't. I trusted that whatever damage there was would be manageable. A few dishes. Maybe a stain on the carpet I no longer had. I flew home on a Friday. My flight landed at 6 p.m. I grabbed my bags, took a rideshare to my building, and when I walked into my apartment, I stood in the doorway for about 30 seconds before I could process what I was looking at. The couch was gone. Not moved. Gone. The wall where it used to sit had a slightly darker rectangle on the paint where it had blocked the light for 3 years. The dining table was gone. The 2 chairs, my grandmother's mirror, the one above the fireplace, gone. The fireplace mantle had a layer of dust on it now, a perfect outline of where the base had sat. My kitchen had pots and pans, but 2 of my better ones. The Le Creuset Dutch oven I'd saved up for, the cast iron skillet I'd seasoned for 2 years, gone. My spare bedroom, which I used as an office, was completely cleared out. The desk I'd assembled, the monitor stand, the bookshelf, empty. My plants were still there. I remember noticing that and feeling almost more upset about it than the furniture. Like, what kind of person steals a couch but waters the pothos? There was a note on the kitchen counter, written in my mother's handwriting on a piece of paper torn from a grocery list notepad. It said, "We knew you'd understand. He needed a fresh start. You've always been so strong. We love you, Mom and Dad." I sat down on the floor because there was nothing else to sit on. I didn't call them that night. I know people always say in these stories that they confronted the person immediately, but I want to be honest. I sat on my floor, ate delivery sushi, and stared at the wall. I'd been on a plane for 9 hours. I was in shock in the specific way that feels more like calm than panic. I went to sleep on my actual bed, which was still there. I guess furniture removal has a size limit, and in the morning I made a list. The next morning I called my friend Rosario. She came over, walked through the apartment with me, and we documented everything with photos and video on my phone. Every missing item, every scuff on the wall where something had been moved. The Dutch oven alone was $400. The couch had been almost $1,200. The desk, the monitor stand, the bookshelf, the dining set. I started adding it up and stopped when I got to $4,000 because I felt nauseous. Rosario said, "You know this is theft, right?" I said, "I know." She said, "What are you going to do?" I told her I didn't know yet. And I meant it. Because here's the thing about family. Even when they do something like this, there's a part of you that still runs the calculation. What happens if I call the police on my own brother? What does that do to my parents? What does it do to me? I wasn't asking those questions out of weakness. I was asking them because I needed to know what I actually wanted, and I wasn't sure yet. What I was sure about, I wasn't letting this go. I called my mother that afternoon. She picked up on the second ring, chipper, like everything was normal. She asked how Zurich was. I told her I was standing in my empty apartment. She went quiet for a moment and then said, "Zoey, it's just furniture." I said, "It's $4,000 of furniture, Mom." She said my brother had a job interview lined up, that he was turning things around, that the furniture helped him feel settled. And this is the part that I keep coming back to even now. She said, "You would have just replaced it anyway. You're always redecorating." I had repainted one room. One time. In 3 years. I asked where my grandmother's mirror was. She paused. She said she thought that was still there. I told her it wasn't. She said she'd ask him. She said it in the same tone you use when someone reports mild inconvenience, like a leaky faucet, like something to get around to when there's time. I said, "Mom, I need everything back or I need to be reimbursed. All of it." She said, "Let's not make this a whole thing." That was the sentence that clarified everything for me. Let's not make this a whole thing. Meaning, let's not make this a thing where you matter. Let's not make this a thing where what was done to you has consequences. I said, "Okay." And I got off the phone. Here's what happened in the next 2 weeks that my parents don't fully know about even now. I called my building's property management office and asked for the access log for my unit. Most modern buildings keep electronic entry records. Mine did. I had timestamps showing my brother entering my unit 47 times over the 8 weeks I was gone. I had him entering the parking garage 22 times. I had the package room accessed 6 times. I pulled my storage unit records too. Accessed 11 times. I also, quietly, reached out to Daphne and asked her to write down exactly what my mother had said to her and when. Daphne was unhappy about the situation and was glad to help. She wrote it all down and emailed it to me. Then I looked up the resale value of every missing item, found comparable sold listings online, and created a document. Not angry, not emotional, just a spreadsheet with item names, original purchase prices, current resale value, and replacement cost. Total $40,340. I filed a police report. I want to stop here because I know how that sounds. I know people reading this will have opinions. Some will say I should have gone further, pressed harder. Some will say I never should have gone to the police over family. Here's all I can tell you. I didn't file it to put my brother in jail. I filed it because I needed a record. I needed the situation to exist officially, on paper, somewhere outside of my mother's version of events where it was just furniture and I was always so strong, and this was simply something that happened rather than something that was done. The police took the report. They told me it was a civil and potentially criminal matter, that I should also consult a civil attorney, and that because I had allowed my brother entry initially, even through my parents, it complicated things. I understood that. I had expected it. What I hadn't expected was what happened next. My mother called me 3 days after I filed the report, furious. Not guilty. Furious. My brother had apparently been contacted as part of the follow-up, and she was calling me to tell me that I was destroying the family over things, and that she and my father were deeply hurt, that I had involved the police rather than handling it privately. I let her finish. Then I said, I'm going to give you 2 weeks to return everything or reimburse me in full. After that, I'll pursue this however I need to. She told me I was being cold, that I'd changed, that this wasn't who she raised me to be. I said, You raised me to be strong. This is me being strong. She hung up. For those 2 weeks, I heard from everyone. My aunt called to tell me my brother was going through so much. A cousin texted that I was making it worse. My dad sent a single message that said, Please reconsider. For your mother. I responded to none of them. Not coldly, not dramatically. I just didn't. I had nothing to explain to anyone who wasn't in that apartment when I walked back in. Rosario checked in on me daily. She brought coffee twice and asked exactly 0 times whether I was sure. I appreciated that more than I can say. She just assumed I knew what I was doing and acted accordingly. On day 11, my brother texted me directly for the first time. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't think I'd care that much. He said the furniture was mostly gone. He'd sold some of it, left some of it at a storage facility he'd rented. He said he'd get it all back to me. He said he had $300 right now and could I just work with him. I said, I'll send you the spreadsheet. He opened it and didn't respond for 6 hours. Then he sent a voice memo. I still have it. Where he said, voice cracking slightly, I didn't know it was this much. I thought you just bought stuff without thinking about it. I didn't know you saved up for the Dutch oven. I didn't know that mirror was grandma's. I didn't know. I believed him. Not that it excused anything, but I believed that he genuinely operated in a universe where my things had no weight because he had spent his whole life watching my things have no weight to our parents. That was almost sadder than if he'd been malicious. What I said back was, the mirror matters most. Get that back first. He did. He found it. He'd given it to a friend's apartment to borrow, and he drove it back to me himself. He stood in my doorway holding it like an apology he didn't know how to say out loud. I took it. I thanked him. I didn't invite him in. Over the following 3 weeks, working with the civil attorney I'd consulted, who had been remarkably calm and clear-eyed about the whole situation, my brother and my parents together reimbursed me $3,800. Not the full amount. The attorney helped me understand the realistic options for the remainder and I made a decision. I accepted the $3,800. I kept the police report open for 60 days and then had it formally documented that restitution had been made to my satisfaction. The remaining $540 I wrote off. Not because I was being generous. Because I was done. My mother called the week after everything was settled. She said she hoped we could move forward. I told her I was willing to have a relationship with her and my father, but that some things needed to be different. I told her I was no longer available to be the strong one who absorbs everything, so that the family can stay comfortable. I told her I loved my brother, but that I would not be allowing unsupervised access to anything of mine again, and that if she had a problem with that boundary, she was welcome to sit with that problem. She cried. My mother is a person who cries, and she cried, and I didn't say, it's okay. Because it wasn't okay. I said, I know this is hard. Because it was hard. For both of us. My father sent me a longer message a few days later. Handwritten, photographed, and texted to me. Which is very him. He said he had not handled it well. He said he had let my mother take the lead because he didn't want the conflict, and he knew that wasn't an excuse. He said he was proud of me. He said he didn't deserve to be, but he was. I cried at that one. I'm not ashamed to say it. My brother and I are. I don't know what we are, honestly. We're in contact. He's called twice since then. Short calls, mostly checking in. He got the job he'd interviewed for. He's in a studio apartment now, his own lease. He texted me a photo of it when he moved in, just the empty room, and I texted back a single thumbs up and then sat with my phone in my hand for a long time thinking about how you love people who hurt you and what that's supposed to look like going forward. I don't have a clean answer for that. I don't think there is one. My condo looks different now. I bought a new couch, same brand, different color, green instead of gray. I found a dining table at an estate sale that I actually like better than the old one. The wall where the first couch sat is a little different now, and I repainted that section and you can't tell anymore. The grandmother's mirror is back above the fireplace. Some days I look at it and I feel the whole thing all over again. Some days I look at it and I feel the whole thing all over again. Some days I look at it and I just see a mirror. I think the thing I want to leave people with. And I don't usually end things this way. I'm not really a message at the end kind of person. Is that the note my mother left said, "You've always been so strong." And she meant it as a compliment. She genuinely did. But what she was actually saying was, we knew you could survive this, and surviving something is not the same as it being okay to do to you. I am strong. That part she got right. But strength is not the same as a permission slip. I've thought about this a lot in the months since everything happened. Not obsessively. I'm past that stage. But the way you think about something when it's finally settled enough that you can actually look at it clearly. Here's what I keep coming back to. My parents didn't do what they did because they were cruel. They did it because, for 31 years, I had made it easy. Every time I absorbed something quietly, every time I said it's fine when it wasn't, every time I let my brother's needs take up the space where my own should have been, I was teaching them, without meaning to, that I had no floor, that there was no point at which I would stop absorbing. I was so determined to be the capable one, the self-sufficient one, the one who didn't need anything, that I accidentally communicated that I didn't have needs worth protecting. That's not self-blame. I want to be clear about that distinction. What they did was wrong. Full stop. But I think about Zoey at 22, at 25, quietly letting things slide because she didn't want conflict, because she loved her family, because she told herself it wasn't worth it. And I understand now that every time I chose silence, I was making a small decision about what I was worth. Those decisions accumulated, and eventually someone took them seriously. The thing about consequences is that they don't exist in a vacuum. My brother sold my furniture not because he was a monster, but because he had spent his entire life watching my things go undefended. He genuinely did not know the Dutch oven mattered to me. That is a failure of character on his part, yes, but it's also what happens when a person has never been asked to consider someone else's weight. My parents raised him inside a dynamic where I was the stable one and he was the one who needed cushioning, and they did it so consistently for so long that it became the only reality any of us knew how to operate in. The moment I filed that police report, I changed the reality, not dramatically. Not with a speech or a confrontation, with a form and a spreadsheet and a willingness to let something be uncomfortable rather than smooth it over one more time. That's what I mean when I say intelligence isn't just about knowing things, it's about knowing which battles matter enough to stay in. I had spent years picking the wrong ones or avoiding them entirely. This time I stayed. Rosario asked me once, near the end of all of it, whether I felt guilty. I thought about it honestly before I answered. I said no. Not because I have no capacity for guilt, but because guilt requires believing you did something wrong, and I didn't. I asked for my things back. I documented what was taken. I gave my family a clear path to make it right. That's not cruelty. That's just what it looks like when someone finally decides their things, their space, their time, their grandmother's mirror, are worth defending. Strength that never holds a line isn't strength. It's just endurance. And endurance without a limit isn't a virtue. It's a cost, one that gets passed quietly, invisibly, to the person who can take it. I couldn't take it anymore. And it turned out that was exactly the right time to stop.